Hello everyone, I'm Sohee Park at the Department of Biostatistics at Yonsei University, Korea. I also serve as a Vice President of Women in Statistics in Korea, WISK, which Dr. Mansuk Oh just presented about. Today, my presentation will be on integrating a gender perspective into statistics. Here is the content of my presentation. First of all, I would like to briefly introduce gender-related statistics. Then, current status of women in science and engineering in Korea. And lastly, current status of women in statistics in Korea will be discussed. Let's begin with gender-related statistics. The OECD Department Center has developed so-called Social Institutions and Gender Index, which provides statistics on discrimination against women in 180 countries around the world. As you all know, the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, were adopted by the United Nations in year 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by year 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. And SIGI, Social Institutions and Gender Index, is one of the official data sources for monitoring gender equality and women's empowerment, which is listed as the fifth element of 17 SDGs. These are the SIGI, Social Institutions and Gender Index values around the world. As you can see from the map, the level of discrimination in North America and European countries showed lower scores than in Africa and Southeast Asia. South Korea is showing a 20 to 30% level, which is still higher than Western countries. Indicators such as the Gender Inequality Index and Gender Gap Index used worldwide are developed by various institutions. Global Gender Gap Index shown on this slide was developed by World Economic Forum. A score of 1 represents the optimal situation. If you can see from the bar graph on the left, Nordic countries and New Zealand are in the top 10 in the world rankings, and Korea is ranked 99th. By the sub-index, Korea is ranked 52nd in health and survival, 72 in political empowerment, 97th in educational attainment, and 115th in economic participants and opportunity. In addition, the Human Development Report, which is reported annually by the UN, calculates the Gender Inequality Index. These indicators are based on various areas such as maternal mortality ratio, adolescent birth rate, the share of seats in parliament, and education. According to this indicator, Korea is ranked 15th in the world. Denmark is ranked first, Norway is second, and Switzerland is third, Sweden is fourth, and the United States is 44th. Therefore, you can see there is a difference in the ranking of world countries depending on which indicator is used. The UN Department of Economics and Social Affairs has also published a report on how to produce statistics on gender inequality. It is specifically explaining what to consider in the data collection step, as well as how to analyze gender-related statistics. More interestingly, It even gives a guideline on how to present those statistics, even with graph examples. Now, let me introduce the current status of women in science and engineering field in Korea. Korea enacted the Act of Fostering and Supporting Women in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, which is STEM, in year 2002. Consequently, Korea Foundation for Women in Science, Engineering, and Technology, which is abbreviated as WISET, was established. WISET promotes mid to long-term policy goals every 5 years. The mission of WISET is to empower women in STEM to demonstrate their strength and contribute to social value. WISET conducts several surveys and publishes reports on women in science, technology, and engineering. I would like to inform you that the statistics shown on this slide are those provided by WISET, and if you are interested in more details, please visit the WISET website. This line graph shows the gender gap changes over the past 10 years for the students in natural science and engineering. The gender gap decreased by 1% in natural science field and decreased by 10% in the engineering field over 10 years. If you look at the gender distribution in principal investigator in science research field, there is a large gap in the proportion of PIs between men and women. In the year 2011, only 7.1% of PIs in science research field were women, but the gender gap has decreased continuously over the past 10 years. This graph shows the changes in gender share of research project managers by institution type. The proportion of women research project managers increased over past 10 years in all institutions. And you can see that increase appeared more in private institutions than in public institutions. And this graph presents the changes in gender share of management positions by institution type over 10 years. If you look at the graph for women, the red line on the top is the management position by women in science and engineering colleges. The second orange line is for public research institutions. And lastly, the purple line is for private research institutions. The proportion of women in management positions has more than doubled over the last 10 years, and the increase was more observed in science and engineering colleges. This pie chart shows the percentage of research project managers by institution type in year 2019. Among the research projects with over 1 billion Korean won, which is equivalent to about $1 million of budget, the proportion of female research project managers was only 8.5%. Considering that in the previous slide, the proportion of women in the overall research project was 11.6%, and it is relatively low in large research projects. The Korean Ministry of Gender Equality and Family conducted a survey in year 2016 on the economic activity of women whose careers were interrupted. According to these statistics, it was estimated that the average time it takes for women who have lost their careers to be reemployed is about 6.6 years. There was a difference between the fields, with the shortest at 4.3 years in the medical field, to the longest at 7.5 years in the natural science field. The following is the radar chart for the age distribution of women with career break in the science and engineering majors. The age group that had the highest percentage of women with career interruption was 40 to 44 years old in natural science and 30 to 39 years old in the engineering field. This statistic is the current status of permanent employees in the field of science and technology research and development as of 2020. There was a big gap between men and women. For women, the proportion of people who worked for more than 5 years was about 41.5%, but in the case of men, it was 63%. This line graph presents the 10 years trend in the proportion of women among promoted R&D personnel by institution type. Although it entered the year 2020, women's promotion is still very low compared to men. It can be seen as a statistic that shows that women in the field of science and technology are limited compared to men in terms of continuity of work and promotion. It seems that this phenomenon has been resulted from career interruption due to marriage, childbirth, child care, and so on, and social atmosphere such as the glass ceiling. Looking at the graph, the proportion of female managers in both private and public institutions increased over years. In particular, the recent proportion of female middle managers in private institutions more than doubled compared to year 2009. This bar graph is the proportion of female students and full-time professors in the natural sciences and engineering departments as of year 2019 in Korea. If you look at the picture, on the left side first, almost half of the students in natural science are females. However, the proportion of full-time female professors is only 34%, which is much lower than the female student proportion. There was a similar pattern in engineering, so the proportion of females among enrolled students was 22%. However, the proportion of females in full-time professors was only 6%. Lastly, this figure shows the proportion of R&D workforce in science and engineering colleges by establishment type and gender in year 2019. The proportion of female full-time professors was lower than that of men in both national and public and private universities. Female full professors in private universities showed a higher proportion, which was 21.7%, than the professors in national and public universities. Then what about the current status of women in statistics in Korea? As increasing the number of women majoring in statistics and increasing the social needs of data science personnel in the era of the fourth industrial revolution, we are comprehending the status of training and utilization of human resources in the fields of statistics. Also, we are trying to improve the career development of female statisticians through networking and mentoring. It is a bit a rough statistic, but we use these two sources to determine the gender distribution of statisticians in Korea. First, we use the statistics from the members list of the Korean Statistical Society. Although the information was quite limited, we used the information on membership types, gender, final degrees including bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees. Second, in order to understand the gender distribution of full-time professors in the Department of Statistics, the keyword statistics was used on the website Higher Education in Korea Service. After that, we accesses to the websites of Department of Statistics of each university to check the list of faculty members and counted the number of female faculty members and analyzed them. First, here is the distribution of student members of the Korean Statistical Society by gender and educational attainment. About 40% of all student members were women, and the proportion of women in the PhD program was smaller than other degrees, but the difference was not very large. There were also missing values on educational attainment, so you can use these numbers as a reference just to understand the overall gender distribution. The proportion of females in student membership was 39%, while the proportion of females in regular membership was only 16.1%. This pattern is very similar to the difference in the proportion of full-time female professors and college students in natural science and technology in the previous slide. Female regular members with master's degrees had the highest percentage at 36.1%, but only 10.6% with doctorate degree. This table presents the proportion of regular members by gender and by the year of last payment of membership dues. Although women account for 16.1% of all regular members, but only 4.4% of lifetime members. The participation of female statisticians is relatively low among statisticians who have been active for a long time with PhD or higher education at the Korean Statistical Society. As I explained in the previous slide, the keyword statistics was used on the website Higher Education in Korea Service. Then I accessed to the websites of each university and identified the number of full-time professors according to the gender on the faculty list. A total of 103 departments of statistics were identified, and Seoul had the largest number with 41. According to statistics, 17.4% of the 443 full-time professors in the Department of Statistics were women, and by region, this range was from 0% in Incheon to 43% in Jeju. Although it is difficult to make an exact comparison because information on the number of students by gender is not available, considering that almost 40% of the student members of the Korean Statistical Society are female, the proportion of female full-time professors in the Department of Statistics is relatively low. In summary, gender inequality still exists worldwide in Korea. Gender gap appears to be distinct in the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in Korea. However, such gender gap has been continuously decreasing over the past 10 years. In the area of statistics, although the female proportion among students majoring in statistics is quite high, the female proportion among professors is much lower. And we look forward to improve the situation with this gender inequality through activities of women in statistics in Korea. Thank you very much for your attention.